Hello, this is Trinity Michael, and I will be presenting to you the Women's Strike for Equality. This famous strike was held on August 26, 1970, where women all across the nation participated in this event. Even some men supported the strike as well. Unlike the majority of other strikes during or before this time period, there was a high diversity in the support, ranging from all races, sexuality, and religious beliefs. The one thing they had in common was what they were advocating for. Now let's get into the why. Before I get into details of how this event unfolded, I believe it is important to understand why women in 1970 were motivated to strike. While women during this time had made a lot of progress on their equality and autonomy, they were far from where they wanted to be. Women were still seen as lesser than and even weak. Opportunities were taken from them and given to men. For example, newspaper columns in the 1960s consisted of job listings, but they were listed specifically as help wanted male or help wanted female. Women were often overlooked and not expected to hold professional, management, or higher paying manual labor positions. Not only were women overlooked in the job field, they also struggled to receive the same level of education as men. One reason for this being that women were expected to take care of domestic responsibilities such as childcare, house cleaning, and cooking. How could they possibly have time for high-level job positions and education when they had so many other responsibilities? Another reason women of this time period went on strike was because they also believed that they didn't have full bodily autonomy because abortion was not legal nationwide or easily attainable. Women were striving for change, and they needed to be heard and recognized. Now that we know the motivation behind the strike, let's talk about the goals of these women. The main woman leading the strike was named Betty Friedan, who was a highly motivated women's activist. She had three main goals: equal opportunity in employment and education, free abortion on demand, and 24/7 childcare. The activist during this time believed women were being held back by their domestic duties and they needed change. Now, as the leader of the Women's Strike for Equality, Betty Friedan, who was also the first president of the National Organization of Women, also known as NOW, she had high expectations for the second wave of feminism. The three goals she had, which I previously mentioned, of equal opportunity in employment and education, free abortion on demand, and 24/7 childcare, were pushed by her supporters, and especially the women of the NOW organization. She was a strong-willed and motivated woman. She made a huge statement specifically during the march when the city had only provided a permit for one lane of Fifth Avenue, but the turnout was so great that she announced to the crowds to use the full width of the street, causing a huge disruption in traffic, which further proved her boldness and seriousness of her motivation. Betty Friedan had a huge impact of the second wave of feminism through her activism and publications of several books which highlighted her beliefs of feminism. Now, what happened? We will jump into what happened on this day on August 26, 1970. There was a nationwide demonstration marking the 50th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. This event, organized by the National Organization of Women and led by Betty Friedan, grabbed the attention of many and goes down in history as the largest participating strike for women. The main part of the event was the march down the Fifth Avenue, where over 50,000 people participating in the strike showed their support for feminism. This large sum of people blocked this main road during rush hour traffic, causing a huge scene. Now, while the march was going on in New York City, this was only part of the strike. The strike was known for participation nationwide. A couple examples include the following. In Louisiana, the newspaper replaced pictures of brides with pictures of grooms in the day's weddings announcements. In Massachusetts, male preachers invited women to preach the day's sermon. Not only was this a day for a strike, it was also known as a day of activism. Women across the country participated in many acts. Activists infiltrated all-male bars and restaurants, held sit-ins and teach-ins. Even at the Capitol, 1,000 women marched on the nation's capital holding signs saying, "We demand equality." One special thing about this strike was that all women could participate. Even women who didn't have the ability to necessarily leave their homes, they could participate through the very impactful strike of simply refusing to clean, cook, or take care of the kids. Overall, women made a huge statement on this day and were certainly able to grab the attention of America through their brave acts of feminism and activism. Lastly, let's get into the outcome of the strike. Overall, there was mixed results. While yes, the strike grabbed a lot of attention and raised awareness to women's oppression, some can argue that not enough was truly accomplished. In the following years after the strike, there was a few victories for women. For example, Title IX was passed in 1972, which forbade sex discrimination in any educational program that received federal financial assistance. Therefore, women gained more educational opportunities, which was one of their main goals. Not only did education improve, the workplace also improved for women during 1980, when sexual harassment was recognized and banned in the workplace. In addition to these accomplishments, women also gained the right to abortion nationwide in 1973 with the passing of Roe v. Wade. And the least successful goal, which women still struggle with to this day, was childcare. While yes, childcare was available, the women of the strike were aiming for 24/7 available childcare. In conclusion, while women experienced a few victories in the short term, long-term results varied in whether or not the strike was truly successful. Women still experience discrimination despite the new laws and still do to this day. Thank you for listening.